A world-renowned Canadian philosopher, Professor John McMurtry, has made the case that the United States holds the record for the country which has killed the most unarmed civilians ever. He makes the case that the United States is a mass murdering machine of epic proportions which nothing in history can compare to, and that the constant wars that the United States pushes generate tremendous revenue for banks and weapons manufacturers in the country. I have traveled alone with only backpack possession through the world, and I have found no state in which police forces are more habituated to violent bullying, more likely to draw a gun, more discriminatory against the disposed, and more arbitrarily vicious in normal behavior, said McMurtry. The U.S. now leads the globe in an underlying civil war of rich against poor. The U.S. can detain, kidnap, imprison, without trial or indictment, any U.S. citizen or other citizen anywhere by designating them as enemies of the U.S. In the course of the interview, the work that he did, he shows how the United States has continually been a supporting ally of many tyrannical regimes which have killed countless people, including Nazi Germany. In history, yes, the United States helped Nazi Germany for quite a long time. And in addition to that, it is the country who's come up with the greatest justification for the murder of innocent people inside their own country, and to take tremendous lengths to deprive people of their rights by simply labeling them as enemies of the state, or by listing them as enemies of the U.S. through the War on Terror, in which any person for essentially any reason can be listed as an enemy, and thus the murdering of a civilian, even an unarmed civilian who hasn't done anything, is therefore justified and legally defended. And the U.S. has basically mastered going into countries and causing civil wars for their own benefit. Syria, Ukraine, Venezuela, and all these other places, all for their own profit motive, all for the dictatorship of capital. And not only have they mastered doing this, they have also mastered the ability to use the media to defend, justify, and in many cases cover up their actions in this. They have found a way to make the media perfectly acceptable to this, to gloss everything in a way so that it still makes the United States the good guy, even though it has done all of these tremendous crimes against humanity. If there's anything the U.S. keeps doing, it keeps telling us how it is the land of the free, and how every American is free, and this is the bastion of freedom and democracy. And you can always tell how serious and how real it is by the fact that they have to continually remind you all the time that they are. Now think about this. All of the draconian measures, every bit of spying, every bit of wrongful arrest, detention, and torture of domestic people, just regular citizens of the United States, all justified, is in essence what is in reality the caricature that was given to us about the Soviet Union. Every exaggerated claim of 1984 and all kinds of scary scenarios and ridiculousness that never actually occurred, the United States does manifest to this day. People in the United States are terrified of their own government because of the things that are going on. Yet somehow they feel that they can turn around and call themselves the bastion of freedom for the rest of the world. And somehow the population of the United States continues to believe that despite how tyrannical their own government is, and they acknowledge that it is, that somehow when their government goes off into another country to promote democracy, somehow it's believable. They don't even believe their own government is giving them freedom or giving them democracy, yet somehow in their minds they can still believe that when their country goes off to another country, another continent, kills scores of innocent civilians, that they're actually bringing them democracy. The contradiction here is absolutely astounding. And a lot of this is actually being done perfectly within a legal framework. The United States builds treaties to take national resources, to steal entire infrastructures of entire governments, of entire countries into private hands for profit, and all of it with a complete gloss of legality, because some kind of treaty was signed without people's permission to do all this. And with all of this tyranny that's being done domestically and globally, who is taking the brunt of it? Who is taking the worst of it? Of course, as usual, it's the third world. For every Occupy Davis incident, for every stop and frisk, these are drops in the bucket compared to what is being done to people in the third world. People in the third world are outright slaughtered by the U.S. military, by private contractors working for the U.S. government, for working for various corporations to forward their interests. It is a death sentence in some countries, ones that are dominated by U.S. imperialism, and ones where U.S. imperialism outright goes in and kills, particularly Iraq. Just being stopped is a threat of death. And this is many, many times worse than any American experiences on any day. The number of people killed, but this is a statistic that a lot of people like to bring out. There have been more Americans killed by police since like 9/11 than actual soldiers by quote-unquote terrorists in the Middle East and other places around the world. More Americans have died from police action than soldiers have died in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, how many third world people have died as a result of the actions of those soldiers, as a result of that U.S. government? Thousands and thousands of times more. How many innocent people have been killed because of the actions of the United States government and the inaction of the American people, and often sometimes the outright support of the American people? And it's situations like this, because the third world is the one who has to take the brunt of what's going on, that first world people don't really want to do anything. As long as they can still benefit from imperialism, as long as first world people can continue to get cheaper commodities because of value that's stolen from the third world, they're not yet ready to rise up and do anything about what's going on. They sit there and they advocate going to a protest, holding a sign, boycotting, conscious consumerism, all of these liberal tactics which accomplish absolutely nothing. And do you know why they do it and why the third world doesn't do it? Because the first world can do it. Because they don't have to do what it is that the third world has to do. They have to go out and fight for their very lives every single day. That is why they are willing to take up arms and fight against the system that oppresses them. Because first world people aren't willing to fight because they're too busy benefiting from that same system. Even some of the poorest people in the United States, as terrible as their lives are, and as oppressed as they might even be, and as bad as the poverty they have, they still have it better and still reap the benefits to some degree from the exploitation of the third world that takes place. We here can go on welfare, can get Medicare, can get all kinds of government subsidies for poor because of the exploitation that is carried out against the third world. And that is something we need to keep in mind here. That as much as this Canadian professor is talking about, philosopher, about how much suffering the United States is and how bad it is, and its tremendous historical record of being just the worst empire in history, the people inside that empire still benefit tremendously from it. And that perfectly explains why they are unwilling to take any serious measures to stop that tyranny from happening, and why the third world must not rely on us. They must liberate themselves. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.